If you want to sneak back in time to a peaceful, stress-free youth, then Child's Pose is just the asana to get you in that zen, relaxed, and playful state for your yoga sequence. I'm Logan Haley and welcome back to the Yoga Nomads. Today we're diving into everything you need to know about Balasana or Child's Pose. This is a resting pose that's so peaceful, so restorative. It helps release your lower back, release tight hips, give you a deep stretch through your upper shoulders, and offers this potential for stillness and relaxation to set your intention in the beginning, middle, or end of a yoga class. So you'll often have Child's Pose or Balasana integrated into flows as your primary resting posture. Anytime you feel overwhelmed or sore or just overexerted during a yoga sequence, you can always return to this peaceful position that somehow awakens this sense of safety and security. It's extremely grounding because you're folding into the floor and you're letting gravity take you down, and you're just getting into this place that makes us really return to that childlike energy. So with that, let's dive into all the benefits of this pose, different variations you can do, modifications you should make, and how to master it. It may look like a simple just folding over your heels, but there's actually so much more to the story. Child's Pose has all these ancient roots and all this interesting psychology behind why it is so grounding and so stress relieving. So we could all use a little relaxation. Let's get back to our inner child. I'm actually practicing Child's Pose here in my bedroom this morning because this is one of my favorite asanas to do first thing when you wake up. It's so easy and relieving that you don't have to worry about like overstretching or over forcing anything while your muscles are still sore and tight from sleep. So you can do Child's Pose really the second you wake up. Sometimes I'll just be in bed and fold into the asana because it just feels right. It just feels right. So the Sanskrit term for Child's Pose, like I said, is Balasana. This comes from the root Bala, which means childlike or youthful, and asana, which means a seated yoga posture. Like all of our yoga poses though, Balasana isn't just for your body. It has a lot of mind, body, and spirit benefits. So some of these are backed by science and other ones are just kind of harder to explain except when you feel them. So the first benefit is reduced back pain, which most of us in the modern world are looking for. This one is actually backed by loads of scientific evidence that people doing Child's Pose can feel a great release in their spine and a lengthening throughout the entire back. So as you fold back into Child's Pose, you can see the space between the vertebrae is lengthened and your tailbone actually kind of goes down. Unlike some poses where you don't want a curve in your back, it's totally fine to have a slight curve as you're folding because this is just lengthening that vertebrae space more to combat the negative effects of a sedentary lifestyle. This also feels amazing after a really intense workout. The next amazing benefit that I love about Child's Pose is the mental centering. So like I said, this is a grounding asana, and something really interesting about going into this pose is that you're actually placing your forehead on the mat, and this is your third eye chakra. So as you go into Child's Pose and place your forehead down, this is activating your third eye. And your third eye is actually linked to something called the pineal gland. So there is a spiritual and scientific link here. The pineal gland is responsible for all of your sleeping and waking cycles. And that is also linked to your hormones and your stress and just your entire body's kind of homeostasis and regulation. So you could hypothesize that as you place the forehead on the floor and you surrender down and you melt into your mat in Child's Pose, that is helping you to activate that third eye chakra and get into this more spiritual state where you can really feel centered and your mind can kind of release all of the junk and stress and all of the things happening in the outside world. Again, so we can return to that inner child. None of us had all this stress when we were little kids. We were just out there like, la, la, la. Oh, I'm gonna be in the dirt. I'm gonna run around. And we didn't mind getting on the ground and being with the earth. So there's a lot of surrender with this pose. And that's definitely going to be a huge benefit, especially for those of us who are a little bit high-strung and fast-moving like I am. So the next major benefit is, of course, the restorative impacts on opening your hips, your thighs, your quads, and a little bit of your ankles. Once again, as you fold back into the pose, you're going to feel almost a little bit of flexion here. So instead of extending, you're going to be putting some compression. But that compression is actually really beneficial. You're lengthening here, you're compressing here, and your ankles feel a little bit of pressure. As we'll explore in a moment, they can roll out, they can stay in, whatever's comfortable for you. But all of those positions in child's pose, any of those adjustments are still going to help you feel that opening in the lower body. Now, the next interesting benefit of child's pose is improved blood circulation. So you really think of circulation as being related to cardio and like intense workouts. But actually, this pose, because of the position, it places your heart lowering to the ground and pulling your back down towards your heels. It actually is scientifically proven to improve blood circulation and reduce blood pressure. So if you have a problem with high blood pressure or you just feel a lot of stress in your life, child's pose is scientifically proven to help with that. Lastly, I love the digestive benefits of Balasana. So we've talked before about different poses that can help with bloating. We have an entire article on that on theyoganomads.com. But the cool thing that you'll find is most yoga poses that help with bloating and help improve digestion are actually going to put a little bit of compression on the stomach. And that may seem counterintuitive. You may feel like you want to stretch out your stomach, but actually doing that can get your digestive juices flowing and activate those muscles. After all, the digestive system is full of muscles. So as we fold into child's pose, we are actually stimulating our digestion. And this can definitely help if you just had a really big meal. You obviously don't want to do a workout, but if it's around the holidays and you really need some relief, you can go into a child's pose and just breathe and hold that, and you might be surprised how much it improves your gas, your bloating, your digestion, etc. All right, so let's talk step by step on how to get into child's pose the right way with proper alignment. You're going to want to begin in tabletop position. So stack your shoulders, elbows, and wrists so they're straight and you have a solid foundation. Same thing here with your hips and your knees. They should be directly above each other, so I'm a perfect box. Next, you're going to make sure the tops of your feet are flat to the mat. You can now bring your big toes together. This is the ankle part I was talking about earlier. When you sit back, if this isn't comfortable, of course, adjust your feet. But we're going to start with just those big toes together and the tops of our feet flat on the floor. You can take a deep inhale. And then on the exhale, sit back over your heels. And this is when you can bring your third eye to rest on the mat. Now, as you feel your hips sinking downward, your pelvis is going to curl under, and you might feel a little bit of arch in your spine. That's totally fine. And you can use your hands to activate and press forward. That's going to allow you to activate the shoulder opening part of the pose as well. As you'll notice, my knees are slightly wider than my hips, which is what helps with the hip opening benefits of the pose. Again, you can adjust your hips and ankles. Some people do like to keep their knees closer together, but you may find more relief by spreading your knees apart and sinking down between them. Now let your chest drop to the floor and let your forehead sink down. With each breath, I'm actively using that exhale to press into the mat slightly and push my hips farther back. So this motion of pushing your hips down is going to give you that grounding sensation and really release this lower back, which feels so freaking good. So be sure that your hands are active. It's really as simple as that, and you can hold child's pose for as long as you want. Getting out of it is as simple as coming back into tabletop or just sitting back onto your knees. Now, if you really want to master this pose, just remember a few of these tips that can help you or your friends or your students to enjoy all those benefits. Number one, we already talked about, is keeping your hands wide and active. You are pressing forward and away. Number two is to check your shoulders. You don't want your shoulders shrugged up towards your ears. You want them relaxed down. So here's the shrug. This is the no. And here's the relax. This is the yes. Again, you can adjust the width of your knees to deepen or lessen the stretch. So wider knees are going to give you more of a groin stretch and really activate those outer hips. Closer knees are going to make the pose a little bit easier and more rejuvenating. And lastly, we can't forget the pranayama breath. I'm not showing this as well right now because I'm talking and teaching it to you, but you absolutely have to focus on your conscious breathing during child's pose. Otherwise, what's the point? You're not relieving all that stress and you're not really surrendering into Balasana. So come take a few breaths with me and let's practice together. Come to the tabletop position. Check your alignment first. You've got your wrists under your elbows, under your shoulders, and you've got your knees under your hips. Now, based on your preferences, you can widen your knees or bring them closer together. I am touching my big toes, and now I'm gonna slowly exhale and sink backwards, my hips towards the floor. Now place your forehead onto the mat and slowly begin pressing forward to create that length in the spine. Wiggle around as needed and make any adjustments, and then just breathe with me for 3 deep breaths. Exhale, release and melt down. Inhale, press your hips down and back a little more. Exhale, release. One more. Inhale. Exhale. And you may even want to hold it longer. Now for a few common mistakes in this pose, number one is tension in the neck. You'll notice that I'm looking up at you while I'm talking so you can hear me, but we definitely don't want to do that when we're really practicing child's pose. You want your neck to be an extension of your spine and be sure that it's fully relaxed downward. Do not do this and look forward or you will feel a kink and tension and it will not be good. Again, straighten the neck down, forehead to the mat. Another common mistake is that large-chested yogis may have trouble fully relaxing in this position. To fix that, you can use a bolster, a block, or just a pillow to add some space between you and the floor. If your chest is prohibiting you from fully diving into the pose, you may want to place a bolster beneath you and widen your stance so that you can fully enjoy the sinking of your hips without being impeded by a large chest. Now, if you are having trouble getting your hips fully downward in a child's pose, you can also use a pillow, bolster, or blanket to prop them up and add some more space. So you can relax and sink downward without worrying about your hips not touching the floor. A few other modifications you can make and variations that I like of child's pose include the side child's pose. So you sink into a regular Balasana, and then you walk your hands over to the right, lengthening through that left side, and walk them over to the left, keeping your forehead on the floor and lengthening through the right side, returning to center. And you can also do the restorative child's pose. So if you're really tired, you really need to just let loose and you don't feel like activating the arms and shoulders any longer. You can always bring those arms back and place the tops of your hands on the mat and let go. On every exhale, just melt and release down and let go of everything. This is the very passive position. You don't have anything active. You're just using gravity to sink down and melt and just flop. It's one of those yoga poses we finally get to flop. But you can stay a little active if you want to. And a final word for preparing for child's pose and counter poses. This is such an easy position. Like I said, you could do it first thing when you wake up, but it does help to do a little bit of like flowing and kind of easy movement, some cat-cows. Or of course, my personal favorite, Shavasana. So with that, I hope you enjoyed practicing Balasana with me today and you learned something new. Thank you so much for joining me on the Yoga Nomads. I hope you have harnessed some of that inner childlike energy and found a little bit more stress relief in your Balasana. Namaste.